Hi, everyone. Welcome to day one of distance learning slash homeschooling. Okay, so the first unit that I have chosen to actually kind of introduce you to some new information is called functions. Chose this unit because it mimics a lot of our slope unit, a lot of the same information, possibly has different names, but we should be able to work through this very easily in our situation. So functions, here we go. What is a function? A function uses a rule to connect an input number or an x value to an output number or y value. The word input and x value, same thing, they're synonyms. Output or y value, same thing, they're synonyms. Okay, so if you hear the word input, all you have to think is x value, and if you hear the word output, all you have to think of is y value. So what we're going to be doing is replacing or substituting input values into function rules, and you get back exactly one output value. So when I input a number into a function rule or an equation, I'm only ever going to get back exactly one output value. So in this case, we're being asked to input 7 into the function rule y equals 2x plus 9. I just told you that the word input meant the same thing as x value. So I can say that x is equal to 7. And if you can see over here in this function rule, we have an x. So all I need to do is replace x with 7. So then I have y equals 2 times 7 plus 9. 2 times 7 is 14. 14 plus 9 is 23. So y equals 23. It's that simple. When you have an input value of 7, your output value is 23 because x equals 7 and y equals 23. Again, the word input is the same thing as x value. The word output is the same thing as y value. So when my input is 7, when my input is 7, the output is 23. Best way to do a lot of this is through what are called function tables. So we're being asked to find the output when given the input for the function y equals x minus 5. Here's our function rule. Here are our x values, our input values. Remember, the x is the input and y is the output. So when I input a number into my function rule, I get only one output. When I input -1, it's like having y equals -1 minus 5. Well, -1 minus 5 is -6, so y equals -6. When I input 0, I replace x with 0, so I have 0 minus 5, which is -5. Then I replace x with 1. 1 minus 5 is -4, so y equals -4. And now I'm going to replace x with 2, so I end up with y equals 2 minus 5. 2 minus 5 is -3, so y equals -3. Now, when the input value is -1, the output value is -6. When I input a -1, I can't get anything else but a -6 out of this function rule. When I input a 0, I don't get anything other than a -5 as an output value. When I input a 1, I can only get a -4, and when I input a 2, I can only get a -3. Here is another function table. Same function table, but instead of having the function rule outside, it's built right into the table. So we have our x values or our input values. We have our function rule where we can show our substituting in, and we have our y values or our outputs. So our function rule is y equals x minus 10. So I'm going to replace x with -1. So I start with -1 minus 10. When I put that into my calculator, y is -11. So when I input -1 into the function rule x minus 10, the output value is -11. I'm going to do the same with 0. So 0 minus 10, my y value or my output value is -10. 1 minus 10, simply replaced x with 1, is -9. And then 2 minus 10, which is -8. X values are inputs, function rule, showing my work, substituting in, y value or my output. So when I input a -1, the output is -11. When I input a 0, the output is negative 10. When I input a 1, the output is negative 9. And when I input a 2, the output is negative 8. Another function table. Here we are inputting negative 2, 0, 2, and 4 into the function rule x plus 4 and determining our output values or our y values. Negative 2 plus 4, 2. 0 plus 4, 4. 2 plus 4, 6. 4 plus 4, 8. So when I input a negative 2 into this function rule, my only output value is 2. When I input a 0 into this function rule, my only output value is 4. When I input a 2, the only output value I can get is a 6. And when I input a 4, the only output value is 8. Now, so far I have used the word input and the word x value. I told you they were synonyms. I'm adding a third one to the list, domain. So input, x value, domain, all the same words. Range is the same thing as your output or your y value. So another name for the input or your x value is domain. Another name for the output or your y value is range. Input, x value, domain, all synonyms. You could use any one at any time. Output, y value, range, again, synonyms. Use any one at any time. Here in this question, now I'm asking you what the domain is. I have 4 ordered pairs. I simply want to know what the domain is. We just, from the previous slide, talked about the fact that domain is the same thing as your input or your x values. So I have 4 inputs or x values here, negative 3, 0, negative 4, and 2. When I go to list them, you have to make sure when you're listing a domain that you list it in order from least to greatest though. I told you my x values were negative 3, 0, negative 4, and 2, but please notice that negative 4 is listed first because it is the smallest, followed by negative 3, then 0, then positive 2. The second half of this question asked me to list the range value. In the previous slide, we discussed that range, output, y value are all the same. So looking at these ordered pairs, I have an output value of 8, 7, negative 6, and negative 5. And again, we do have to put them in order from least to greatest. So when I go to list them, the range is negative 6, negative 5, 7, followed by 8. Find the range of the function for the given domain. So I need to find the range of this function. I need to find the output values, the y values, given these domains or x values. So this is similar to that function table, except it's not listed the same. Often when you have a domain listed, it's listed with these brackets, but these are domain values, so they're just x values. So again, I just substitute in 5 times 3 minus 5 is 15 minus 5, which is 10. Then again, do the 15, replace x. 3 times 15 is 45. 45 minus 5 is 40. And now replace x with 22. 3 times 22 is 66, minus 5 is 61. So my range, again, listed in the brackets, is 10, 40, and then 61. Find the range of the function y equals 4x if the domain is negative 1, 0, 1, and 2. Domain. I believe there were some words that I've learned that are the same as domain. If you don't remember, always feel free to flip back through this video at any time. But the words that mean the same thing as domain are x value or input. So I have to find the range, find the output or the y values for this function given these x values. So again, just replace x with these numbers and solve for y. Negative 1 times 4 is negative 4. 0 times 4 is 0. Replace x with 1, so 4 times 1 is 4. And then replace x with 2, so 4 times 2 is 8. Domain, my input, my x values. When I input these numbers into this function rule, here are my output values or my y values. Okay, that's all I have for you on that Google Slides. But here within, I wanted to show you this one other thing that I thought was a great way to show you what all these words mean. Okay, here we have our x value and list it on this side of what looks like a function table or the other words that mean X value. We'd already talked about input and domain. Independent variable is another word that you may hear. Most likely not. Input domain will be the word you hear most often. And then X. And then on the right-hand side are the Y terms that mean the same thing given those X terms. So output, range, dependent variable, and then f of x. In the YouTube video I had you watch as well, or if you watch it next, you're going to see how and why f of x is the same thing as y. So very common, x comma y, input output, domain range, independent variable, dependent variable, x, f of x. If you hear the word input, you should use output. If you hear domain, you should use range. If you hear X value, you should use Y. Now I would like you to go to the assignment I have posted on Classroom that'll be due by tomorrow morning on functions. It's labeled Functions Day 1. Good luck. Don't forget to go back through this video, email me, request a Google Meet at any time if you need some help.